Many among the illustrious philosophers, theologians, scientists and translators of the Arab Empire were Jews or Jewish converts to Islam. Historically, it is clear that while some of the Jews were suffering persecution and humiliation in one or more countries, other communities were faring much better. With the Renaissance, and especially after the Napoleonic Wars and the establishment of the United States of America, the Jewish contribution in most fields of knowledge accelerated enormously. Their appetite to learn was unquenchable. Their assimilation in Europe and American societies was spectacular, to say the least. While the Christians and Jews were inventing, discovering, creating and exploring everything they can, the followers of Muhammad in their hundreds of millions were stagnating in squalor, illiteracy, ignorance and servitude to their despotic political and theological leaders. In the 500 years from 1450 to 1950, no one can name 5 Muhammadans who have contributed anything of value for the advancement of human knowledge in any field from among the hundreds of millions who existed. Not even 5 names. The same can be said about those who have lived in the Arabian Peninsula for the last 1400 years. One cannot name 5 human beings. The indoctrinated followers of Muhammad and many politically correct beings do not ask the question, why is this so? How is it possible? If, as they keep telling us, that the Quran loves knowledge, do we find its followers amongst the least literate or learned in the world? How is this possible when they actually represent 20% of humanity and occupy almost 11 million square miles, or 21% of the land surface of the earth, of which the total area of its 6 habitable continents, Antarctica excluded, is around only 52 million square miles? How is this possible when we know how much wealth in natural resources are contained in these lands? How is it possible that over 1400 million Muhammadans cannot and do not match the intellectual and economic productivity of 14 million Jews worldwide? How can a mere 5 million Jews of Israel, the alleged descendants of monkeys, in their tiny 8,000 square miles, 1 out of 1,375th of Muhammadan territories, without any natural resources, produce thousands more scientific papers, more inventions, more technologies, and more discoveries than the combined output of all the alleged superhuman Muhammadans put together? The most astounding and remarkable indicator of what we are addressing are the Nobel Prizes. The Nobel Prizes are awarded by the Nobel Foundation of Sweden to men and women who have rendered the greatest service to humankind. Between 1901 and 2008, more than 750 Nobel Prizes were handed out. Of these, at least 159 are Jews. Let us look at these figures statistically. The Jews represent 0.2% of the world's population, while the Muhammadans are over 20%. Yet the Jews, the alleged descendants from monkeys, have collected over 20% of all the Nobel Prizes in physics, biomedicine, chemistry, economics, and literature. The remaining 79.8% of humanity collected the remainder, among whom were 5 Muhammadans for achievements made among the kuffar and not in their native Muhammadan cultures. Excluding these prizes, everything that the followers of Muhammad wear or use was and is invented by 80% of unbelieving kuffar, with not a single contribution of value from the followers of Muhammad in any of them: medicine, engineering, architecture, biology, electronics, space, oceanography, geology, botany, or any other field of human intellect. The above statements and more can be easily verified at the click of your mouse. The disproportionate contributions made by the unbelieving kuffar, compared to almost the total absence from the believing Muhammadans in over 53 countries, from different cultures and races, must have a foundational reason. This is not an arbitrary aberration. This is a colossal singularity in human lack of achievement, especially when we are repeatedly reminded of their once upon a time so-called Islamic civilization. Why did this alleged civilization wither away if its foundation is based upon a Quran full of knowledge? The Quran, after all, continued and continues to be the guide of the believers in every aspect of their life from birth to death. The answer is actually very simple. It is evident that this very deep anomaly can only be understood by very perceptive or sophisticated people, which is as follows. Every aspect of their life, right down to how to wash one's private parts, as well as how to think of and despise every human being on earth that does not totally conform to their own narrow agenda, is firmly established for all time, with no prospect of change, revision, improvement, or adaptation to different places or times by Muhammadan Islam. This means that the moment Muhammadans find their Islamic identity, they can stop thinking independently, since everything is determined for them from then on. Again and again, we have to point out to all of you that the only time Muhammadans were able to contribute anything of value was under the rule of tolerant and hence mostly secular rulers. Never under fundamentalist Muhammadan Islam. Never. The Christians and Jews were to evolve intellectually and be able to separate church and temple from the state. The Muhammadans cannot or are unwilling to do this separation of mosque and state. Christians and Jews are able to look at their scriptures, investigate them, critique them, and re-evaluate them in the light of the 21st century conditions without having to deny their holiness in totality. Muhammadans will not change an iota of what Muhammad alleged was revealed to him by Allah's Gabriel. They are thus forever stuck in the time warp of Muhammad's 7th century Arabia, from which point they cannot progress or adapt. This year, Islam's and Judaism's holiest holy days overlapped for 10 days. During that period, Muhammadan Muslims racked up over 389 dead bodies in terror attacks across 10 countries, while the Jews worked on their 159th Nobel Prize. What have the Arabs and Muhammadans contributed to humanity in the last 30 years? Not an iota in knowledge, but they have been and are the best at hijacking planes, murdering their unarmed passengers, also in cars, buses, trains, restaurants, airports, hotels, etc. They are perfecting more and more methods of terror against invariably civilian targets all over the world. They have cost the economies of the world trillions of dollars in expenses in implementing security methods. They have caused the most horrendous delays at airports because of security. We, the public, in our millions, have to waste at least 4 hours every time we intend to fly to our destinations. The cost to us has been and is burdensome. When we confront the Muhammadans with these subjects, we get the most incredibly unintelligent answers imaginable. When we asked, for example, about the disproportionate number of the Jewish Nobel laureates, their answer was simple and emphatic. The Nobel Institute is Zionist. When asked about the discrepancies between the Quran and the Bible, their answer is again quick and simple. The Bible is corrupted. The Quran is perfect. No proof, no logic, no facts are required. We say so. End of discussion. They have a simplistic and imbecile answer to everything. Their ability to deny all facts and reality is not only astounding, but extremely frightening when one realizes that we are dealing with a hermetically and unpenetrable closed mindset. Every single item we have so far addressed has a common denominator called the Quran. All Muhammadan denials and accusations that everything bad happening to them or by them is because of others do not and cannot hold sway anymore. We have shown in these sections that even when we compare the Muhammadans to the smallest entity, the Jews, they fail both as an ummah and as a cult in being benevolent contributors to the rest of humanity. Their cult belief system is the root cause of all their misery, anger, joylessness, hate-mongering, warmongering, racism, ignorance and stupidity, and the internet is helping reveal all this to all of them and all of us. That is why they must shut us up or down. That is why we, the ummah of the kuffar, All Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, animists and others must be one ummah. All for one and one for all. I would like to leave you with the following quotes. An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile hoping it will eat him last. Winston Churchill. Evil triumphs when good men do nothing. Edmund Burke. It is clear that while some of the Jews were suffering persecution and humiliation in one or more countries, other communities were faring much better. With the Renaissance, and especially after the Napoleonic Wars, and spectacular to say the least. While the Christians and Jews were inventing, discovering, creating and exploring everything they can, the followers of Muhammad in their hundreds of millions were stagnating in squalor. Many among the illustrious philosophers, theologians, scientists and translators of the Arab Empire were Jews or Jewish converts to Islam. Historically, in the establishment of the United States of America, the Jewish contribution in most fields of knowledge accelerated enormously. Their appetite to learn was unquenchable. Their assimilation in Europe and American societies was illiteracy, ignorance and servitude to their despotic political and theological leaders. In the 500 years from 1450 to 1950, no one can name 5